So here I am. I wrote it last night. I had to write it down, so I'll probably read from this a lot. This is also my husband, who you saw this morning, Dustin. And he's a big part, obviously a big part of our journey. This is Simon. He is a year and a half, an all boy, and I'll talk about in a little bit. Life's challenges and storms often bog us down, sometimes so much we wonder if we can continue. Too many times we use our own strength to fight through these storms, and the result is we fall flat on our face. We often forget God is very willing and more than able to give us the best kind of peace and comfort. My husband Dustin and I endured a 4-year battle with infertility, trying to conceive a child. We started in July of 2008. We had the goal that we wanted to wait until a lot of our professional goals were met, as I'm sure quite a bit of people here have done too. We got married, I was right out of college, so we got married young, wanted to have fun and travel and have our dream home before we started having children. So we followed doctor's orders, tried for a year, doesn't happen, come back and see me, we can go from there. Did that, did months and months of fertility drugs, Clomid, which if you've been on Clomid, I call the devil. It makes you look crazy. Months and months of feeling like a failure on fertility drugs. So we sought the help of a RE, a reproductive endocrinologist in the area. And at that point in our journey, as my husband can attest, was probably the lowest for me. Because I felt very disconnected from my faith. I relied on making decisions for us. It was me making the decisions for us. He just wanted his wife to be sane. And I just wanted a child. Obviously he did too, but I just knew the RE would solve the problem, and we began our way to starting our family in no time. So first thing that we did was I decided that we were going to do an insemination. After the first one didn't work, I decided that we were going to do another one. After all, the doctor said to try at least 3. So then I was making a lot of decisions. There wasn't a lot of praying for guidance or discussing the pros and cons with Dustin. He definitely had some concerns jumping in head first without any discussion, and he relayed those concerns to me, but I was in control, so we were going to continue going on. About the same time, my mom and I began a Bible study at my church, and I truly feel that God blessed me with this Bible study because he knew it was exactly what I needed at that point in my life. After the second insemination failed, as I said earlier, it was an all-time low for us. I was trying my hardest to be in control of the situation, but obviously that wasn't working out too well for us. I was incredibly angry with God, which some of you may be at that point now, you may have been at that point, or you may be at that point at some time in the future. Why would he do this to me? He could prevent this from happening, couldn't he? Everyone would tell me he won't give you more than you can handle. I now know that statement is wrong, but I'll explain more about that in a little bit. The doctor was recommending IVF for our next step. And at that point, we thought the only reason we couldn't get pregnant was because of the male factor. However, we wanted to pay for the IVF with cash, and who has $10,000 to $20,000 just laying around? Not very many people. So we began the wonderful waiting game and waited and saved up money. We all know what it's like to wait for something you really, really want, and it feels like it's impossible. But the Bible study that I was in was a saving grace and got me through that rough period in our life. It seemed as if every word in the book and every scripture reading was talking directly to me in our situation. Through this study, I transitioned from being a Sunday-only worshiper to reading the Bible and keeping a prayer journal on a daily basis. My alarm clock would go off at 3:30 in the morning, and so I was out of bed and reading my Bible by 4, and then off to the gym by 5. Yes, that may seem kind of crazy, but it was what worked for me. It's what I absolutely needed. He enjoyed it because he got to sleep in bed for a few extra hours without me poking him. But it was what I needed. It is what I needed to get my day started on the right foot. As I said, I was an all-time low at that point, and I needed God, and he definitely spoke to me through my Bible readings. He taught me a lot about myself, strengthened my relationship with him. I realized through the readings, I was depending on my own strength. I was making the decisions without turning to God first in prayer. And I was also making a lot of the decisions without even consulting Dustin. I learned God placed this hardship in our life for a reason. Since this point, I've learned God has many reasons for blessing us with infertility. The other day, I was rereading my prayer journal that I kept during that moment in my life, and I found the exact moment when I felt God's call to begin an infertility Christian-based support group. I was reading in Genesis how Joseph endured hardship and problems to experience God's power, rising above my suffering to show others the peace I had from spending time with God was something I didn't want to keep to myself. I wanted other women to also experience this peace and understanding. It may not work out how we envision it, but it will work out for the best because God's plan is the best. The peace from God felt so refreshing compared to the stress I felt when I was realizing my own strength. And obviously my dreaming didn't stop there. A few years after starting a support group, I felt another little nudge from God that said, okay, God, or he said, okay, Allison, I've got some other plans for you. And that's how KCIA started. I had this dream that several infertility doctors and several counselors would come together and help men and women change their family, help take charge of their family building journey. We felt lost in the beginning. We felt overwhelmed. We were angry. We were frustrated. In the very beginning, there's just a whole bunch of emotions. As you know, throughout, there's a whole bunch of emotions. And I wanted to have a way for you all, the Kansas City community, to be your own advocate and learn from people, the mistakes that we all made along the way. I learned the doctors want to find the quickest way for you to build a family because that's the most cost effective. Makes total sense. However, I also learned that sometimes that's not always the best for the situation. As with us, it wasn't the best for us. And through talking together, praying, and reading our Bible, we learned that. In the beginning, I read every book, every article, every magazine about infertility I could get my hands on. I felt like I was a walking encyclopedia, which some of you probably feel right now. I wanted you all to have fewer setbacks and more strategies than we did at the beginning. A few months later, the first conference occurred, and it was an amazing experience to see the blessings God had given us. It's even more amazing to know in my heart this is God's plan for me. With His guidance, I was using my control-freak ways. Anyone here control-freak? But I was using them in a positive manner. And I am forever grateful for His guidance and support as this foundation continues to grow to serve couples struggling to build a family. A few months after the conference, the first conference, we went through a round of in vitro, which did not have the ending that we had hoped for. We were very hopeful it would work, since it takes the male factor basically completely out of the equation. However, we learned through the experience that I also had diminished ovarian reserve. My egg quality and my quantity was lower than the average person my age. And to put that experience into words was extremely difficult for both of us. It was definitely the most painful part of our journey. I remember, as Dusty talked about this morning, I remember laying on the couch just bawling my eyes out when we received the phone call, thinking, God, why are you giving me more than I can handle? And even though it was the most difficult part of our journey, it didn't feel impossible as it had when we did the examinations. Yes, we were definitely dealt with more than we could handle. However, we had changed since the examinations. Our hearts and our minds had been molded by Christ. We realized there was a reason it failed and God had a better plan for our lives. Now, I won't lie, there were days when it would me up off the floor because I felt like I couldn't go any further. However, deep down, I knew it would be okay because God said so in Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you come to this verse, and I still do every day. It gives me peace because I know God's plan for Dustin, me, Simon, and if we are blessed with future children. On February 26, 2012, Dustin and I received a wonderful blessing from God, our first ever positive pregnancy test. Scientifically, we had a less than 2% chance of conceiving naturally. Spiritually, we know this blessing was a miracle from God. Words can't explain the emotional roller coaster we heard. Simon Brett Spencer was born on his due date, October 27, 2012. Our view of life and our fertility has significantly changed since we began in 2008. And we are elated that God has given us this blessing and that the timing is perfect because it's God's timing. Philippians 4:13 states, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. One thing this journey taught me is we can endure any hardship because God is always there to lift our burden. We look forward to sharing our story with Simon in years to come. We feel blessed that God has chosen us to bear the hardships of infertility. This journey has strengthened our relationship in Christ, our marriage, and it's also helped others who are struggling to build a family. One day, Simon will be able to tell his friends. I'm going to laugh at this, start crying. One day, Simon will be able to tell his friends, his wife, and his children how prayers really can't be answered. Thank you. I made it to last. We had these wonderful women who came last year to do our baby infertility, and it was a huge hit. And so we definitely wanted Melissa and Anna to come back and to share with you all. If you were here last year, some people didn't get a chance to come. Or if you're new this year, we're glad you're here. So I know Anna's going to start. Right? Anna's going to start. This is Anna Bannister, and they both have, as you'll know, they both have very different stories, even very different from mine. And it's just, I want you to enjoy yourselves, and thank you.
Thank you. My name is Anna Bannister. My husband Norman and I live in East Summit, and we've been married to 15 years this fall. And so I just wanted to share with you, I think as Allison said, Melissa and I both have very different stories. So I just wanted to share a little bit of what my journey of faith was through our infertility struggle. And I just wanted to let you know that I don't stand up here today and profess to know exactly what your struggles are. Excuse my grandma glasses. I'm getting really good when I can't see. This happened this year, so I'm really struggling with this. I don't know exactly what your struggles are or exactly what you're feeling, but I will tell you that I walked a very similar path. I'm a firstborn, type A personality, control freak. I can sit down right now, right? Because you guys can relate. So we all know what that means. Like Allison said, I was in control. I was going to figure this out. I was going to do it. And that wasn't actually how it works. I made a lot of mistakes along the way. We really, I just back up. It wasn't a pillar of strength for everything that we went through. But now being on the other side of it, I think that Norman and I do have a story to share with you. One of my favorite books that I was reading during this time, besides the Bible, is The Red Sea Rules by Robert Morgan. And one of the things that he talks about that is a story where he was on a plane and he was going through this horrible storm. And the plane was shaking and there was a lot of turbulence and how horrible it was and everybody was really scared until they broke through the clouds and broke through the storm and got to the other side. And when they were looking down on it, how peaceful it was. And I thought that was a really good illustration because our struggles, we feel are very, it's very introspective, it's all about us. But God sees a different picture. He sees our struggle, but he sees the end result. But that's hard to know how to handle that when you're going through it all. So we know that God answers prayers in 3 different ways, right? Yes, no, and wait. We've all been in the waiting thing. And we're all asking, Lord, please don't make me wait anymore. Please don't make me wait anymore. Because I've been there, I've done that. Please give me a yes or give control what happens to us, but we can control how we respond to that. Because as people of faith, we are not without hope. We're not without hope, even when it feels like that. And I think that Allison says, when you get angry with God, it's okay, he can handle it. He can handle your anger. Because he knows the outcome. So one of the things I wanted to ask you, several questions I have for you today is, do you believe God is who he really says he is? Do you believe God is who he really says he is? Is he omniscient? Is he powerful? Does he keep his promises? Is he in control of everything? Because I know that God wants to bless us. Jeremiah 21:11, I know he wants to bless us. I know that feels like when you're in the middle of it that you can't feel that, you can't see that. But we have to keep eyes on him, eyes on him at all times. He wants to bless you. It is not a punishment, and I know we have all been there, right? Is this a punishment? Is there something I did? Is there something that I'm getting in the way of God working in my life? This is not a punishment. He grieves with us. He wants us to know that he's in control. But it does take completely surrendering to his will. And that being in control for you and me, that's one of the hardest things to do, was to surrender to his will. Will you trust him? Why should you trust him? Because he is who he says he is. He is who he says he is. God sees our struggles, but more importantly, he sees the outcome. Will you trust him no matter how he will grow your family? No matter what, will you trust him? Sometimes I would hear that little voice in my head saying, Anna, even if. And all I can do is fall on my knees and just say, Lord, even if, no matter what it takes. Because having him in the storm was better than being in the storm without him. Because I didn't feel like I had a choice. So keep your eyes on God. I do believe that discouragement is one of Satan's best tools. I feel like it's a spiritual battle. We know the outcome that God wins. Don't let him take this battle from you. Don't let him take this battle. Keep your eyes on God. We went through a lot of different things. We tried for many years. We did all the tests, every single test you can do. We did insemination, we did clomid, we did injectables, we did the IUI. We had several people that had unplanned pregnancies that we offered to adopt their children, and they had abortions. We went through adoption processes that failed. We went through the gamut. We went through it all. And those were devastating times. And when I look back on it now, and I think, like I said, I was not a pillar of strength through that. We struggled with our friends, because nobody gets it, right? Nobody gets that internal struggle that you're going through. And I always felt like I was on the outside looking in. Because being older, all my friends already had their kids. So I felt like the outsider that was standing banging on the window saying, I want to get into the party. I can't get in. When it came to everything from birthday parties or school trips or the mundane things they talk about doing their child's hair, everything just feels like it's directed at you. Every time I go out, I'd see a pregnant woman and I'd think, stop putting your belly at me. Because just everything felt like it was about you, right? Some of the most devastating times. We had a miscarriage ourselves. And I remember, like Allison said, just being on her knees and crying out, God, why would you let us get this close? Why would you let us get this close and we're not happy? I mentioned that, I'll back up. So things that really help me staying focused on God is staying in prayer, reading. Music is a big help for me. My husband and I both sing. Just being in music is a worship to me. So being able to sing and express myself in that way, maybe it's doing a journal. I would also encourage you not to seek out other people. Seek out support systems. I wish I would have had KCIA when we were going through all of this. Seek out other people. Let others pray for you. When we were going through our struggle, letting other people in on your story. And then other times, my friends got tired of hearing it because then they didn't know what to say anymore. There has to be a balance somewhere in that. But let people into your story. Because if you don't, you're denying people the opportunity to see God work in your life. And no matter what, this is all about God being glorified. I can't tell you, after we had our family, started having our family, the people that would come up to me and say, "Look what God did. God, I can't believe what God did in your life." Because I promise you, when we finally started having our family, I felt like people kept, the church prayed our family into existence. Sarah, right? The church prayed, everybody prayed for us. I had people come up that I didn't even know that would say, "We were praying for you." And how amazing is that your life would be something that God can use to touch other people so that they can see God working and bringing His glory. Don't let this be an opportunity to distance yourself from God. Cling to Him with all you have. Cling to Him with all you have. I mentioned before, one of the books that meant a lot to me was the Red Sea Cruise. And the whole premise behind this book is about the Israelites when they were being led out of Egypt. When you think about it, God took them when they left Egypt. He said, "Go here, go here, go here, go here, go here." If you read it in the Bible, it's very specific about where they went on their journey. And it was kind of a roundabout way. There could have been a better beeline to where they were going. But God said, "No, I want you to go here, go here, go here, go here." He had a purpose for their whole entire journey. But then they got to the Red Sea. And the sea is before them. They've got the mountains on either side of them. And they've got Pharaoh breathing down their neck. Do you think that felt impossible? They thought they were going to die. And why did He bring them right there? They could have gone a different way. Why did He bring them right there? So that they would know that the only way they were being saved was by God. And no other way. So they would remember that it was God that did that. And that meant a lot to me when they were going through that story. This was. So now I went back up and tell you just a little bit, and I remember all the time when I was spending a little bit about our story is that, again, I said we went through all those different things. We've been married 6 years before our daughter came into our lives. Her name is Mara Anna Calais. Mara is the story in Exodus when the Israelites came across a body of water called Mara, and the water was bitter, and they couldn't drink it. And God tells Moses to throw a stick into the water, and the water becomes sweet. Her name is Mara Anna Calais. Calais is Hawaiian for joy. It has been really Hawaiian. It's joy. So her name means God takes all bitterness and turns it into sweet joy. Whenever God did something in the lives of the people in the Bible, in the Old Testament, they had a little pillar, right? A memorial stone so they would remember. Her name is her memorial stone. So we don't ever forget what God did. So when I look at her, I remember that this is what God did in our lives. We went through, again, all the treatments. We had a miscarriage, the failed adoption process. We tried to adopt 2 little boys from the Philippines that were distant relatives of my husband. And we waited for 18 months. We filled out paperwork, had pictures of the boys, and I really thought that these boys were going to be ours. And in December, I guess it would have been 2004, after 8 months of trying, we found out that those boys were not eligible for adoption, and we would never be able to adopt those boys. was no misstep in timing of all of this. Because it was God saying, no matter what you're going through, Anna, I'm still in control. I'm still in control. It has nothing to do with you. Nothing to do with how much your research you're doing or how much you're trying to control this situation or manipulate this situation to you. I'm still in control. I'm the giver of life. When our daughter was born in the living room, I was thinking about this on the way in here. The living room was full. We had all these people in there, and there was such crying and jubilation in that room, and the doctor was not, she was on call, it wasn't our regular doctor, and she looked at us and she said, what's going on? Are you okay? What's wrong with you people? I said, you don't even know. You don't even know. But this is what God made. So just hold on to hope. Don't take your eyes off of God. Reach out to other people. Cling to what you know is God who He says He is. I'm happy to hang out afterwards, talk to anybody, share, exchange information. If you just need encouragement or just need a help, send me a text for the day and say I'm praying for you. I would be happy to do that. And I'll be happy to answer questions after this is done too.
Good morning. So just a little bit about myself. My name is Melissa Bardwell. This is, as Alice mentioned, this is my second year here at speaking about this very same thing. But a little bit about myself. I am a wife to my husband Joe for almost 15 years, and I am a mother. I'm a professional school counselor. But one of the main things, which I probably should have put first, is that I am a follower of Christ. And so this story very much reflects my relationship with God. So for a moment, I'd kind of like to know just a little bit about you. If you are just getting started in this journey, like, raise your hand if you're just getting started. Like, I don't really know much. Okay. If you have begun trying some different things, raise your hand. Okay. If you feel like you're running out of options, how many of you feel like I'm kind of running? Okay. It's good to just kind of know. The thing that I want to start with is, who is God to you? Because you'll notice down here I wrote, the journey of infertility will challenge your faith, what you believe to be true about God, and whether or not you believe God loves you and if His plans are right. So I wanted to start with them for a moment of, what do you believe about God? Do you believe that He is a loving God who will give you anything that you want? Do you believe He's some cosmic killjoy who wants to just rain down on all the fun and plans that you have? Do you believe He's in control of everything? And do you believe He has a perfect plan? That's something that I want you to think about. This is a picture of my husband and I. As I mentioned, we've been married for almost 15 years. The thing about my story is very similar to probably most women's in this room, is that from the time I was a little girl, I wanted to be a mom. There was just no question about it. I wanted to be a mom. My mom has 4 children. She was a stay-at-home mom all the way. I was the youngest. She stayed home with all of us all the way up until my junior year of high school. So that was my plan. My plan was to be a mom, hands down. At 9 years old, I watched the movie Annie, and I was wrecked as a 9-year-old at the fact that there were kids who didn't have parents. I was wrecked. I would talk about it for the next several years, that someday I was going to adopt kids. So I knew that from early on, and that was always going to be a part of my story, both of it. I was going to have biological children, maybe 2. I was going to adopt 2 kids and kind of help save the world mentality. When I first started dating my husband, on our very first date, I just like to cut to the chase of things. I am not, like, let's not beat around the bush. If you know me, I like to ask really hard questions to make you think. And so on our very first date, I said, tell me, Joe, what are the top 3 things that you struggle with most in the world? And he looked at me. But really what I wanted to know is, can you be real with me? Because if you can't be real, then I don't really want to keep going in this dating relationship. The second thing I asked him was, what do you believe about adoption? He's like, well, it's in the Bible. I think it's an okay thing. Is this a trick question? And I said, well, no, but I want to adopt someday. That is part of my plan. And I just want to know from the get-go, what do you think? He's like, well, isn't it in James? Yep, it's in James 1:27. Take care of the widows and the orphans. So that's part of where we started. We were married for 18 months when I went off all forms of birth control. And within about 6 months, we weren't having any success. So we started Clomid. Did Clomid on and off for the next year. Nothing was working. I will echo anybody in this room that says Clomid makes you crazy. It sure does. And so there was a season of rest for us. During that time of rest, I would like you to meet this little boy. This is Jordan. I was a school teacher before I became a counselor, so this is me as a teacher. And Jordan was my student. He was my 3rd grade student in the year of 2003. And he was a squirrely little thing. I would go take him to the restroom, and they'd be like, Miss Bardwell, Jordan's in the bathroom climbing over the stalls. And he'd come out, and I'd say, were you in the bathroom climbing over the stalls? I mean, the kid, he had a smile that lit up his face, and he knew no way to lie. I mean, he was so honest to a fault that yes. Well, I found out really quickly that Jordan was in foster care, and my husband and I had already become foster parents, which is a different kind of story for a different reason. And it wasn't long. I had told my class I was a foster parent because that particular year I had 3 foster kids. And it wasn't long before in the back of the class one day, he goes, adopt me. And my heart broke. And that was literally at the end of September, beginning of October. And I kept going home and telling my husband, there's this kid that I just really love. And so long story short, Jordan is now my adopted son. Next, I would like you to meet Samara. Isn't she cute? I was trying to think of what picture to put up here. So all of this stuff is going on. I've got 2 different stories going on at one time. I have the infertility journey that I'm still on through this time, but I also have this story of adoption because, as I said, I was going to do both. So this is Samara. 6 months after Jordan moved in, Samara was born. And she came to live with me as a foster kid. I picked her up from the hospital when she was 2 days old, and she has been with me ever since. If you know much about the foster care system, it's not for the faint at heart, because even though I had her from the moment she was 2 days old, I didn't get to adopt her until she was 15 months old. I didn't know from one day to the next if I was going to get to adopt her. Jordan's story was completely different. Like, when we went through that process, it was over and done. So that's Samara. She is officially adopted. She is such a joy to me. And so much like me, and I think she looks like me. It's really crazy how much they are both so much alike. All of us. It's just hilarious. But then meet Jace. Jace is another little story of ours. Jace was 3 weeks old when he came to live with us. He is, if I could bottle just a little bit of his energy, I would never have a weight problem because he is so full of energy that literally he starts at 6:30 in the morning and he goes and goes and goes and goes until he crashes. But Jace came to live with us again as a foster care situation when he was 3 weeks old, and we got to adopt him when he was 13 months old. So we kind of went through that whole process again as well. So I found this quote yesterday. One of the things that I say about infertility is it is the silent grief. We go along through life and we deal with it so internally. And if we have cancer or something like that, people would, every time they'd see us, they'd be like, how are you doing? How are things going? But when you have infertility, it's that subject that nobody really wants to talk about. And so you kind of walk through Mother's Day and you kind of walk through all these different parts of your story, feeling alone, story, but I know that in my story, there have been 9 women that I have journeyed at different parts in the last 13 years of my infertility. There have been 9 women that I've journeyed with. One of them being Nicole Hayes, who's on a part of KCIA. All of them have had children that need biological. So, I say that to say there is a point in which the air sucks out of the room when you hear things. So a heartbreak isn't always as loud as a bomb exploding. Sometimes it can be as quiet as a feather falling, and the most painful thing is nobody hears it except you. I think that just is really a good illustration of what infertility can feel like some days. So part of my story, as I mentioned, we met all 3 of my kids, and all 3 of their adoptions happened within 3 years of each other. And during that time, I was still seeing doctors, I was still going to visit, but Joe and I had had some really hard conversations from the beginning of our struggle of what we were willing to do and what we were not willing to do. And one of those things is we were not willing to go into debt on the chance. Even before we had adopted any of our kids, we were not willing to go into debt. That is our personal choice. But that is where we landed. And so you would see parts throughout our story where we would start something, and then we would find more information out. There's a male factor on his part. There's a female issue on my part. And so as time went on, we had gone to a endocrinologist, and we found out that we had less than 5% chance of conceiving on our own. Like, we were going in there with the mentality of insemination, and he was like, oh no, you all have long blew past that one. The only chance you have is in vitro. So it took us 2 years because we were like, we don't have the money for in vitro. And so all through that time, the Lord just kept saying, do you trust me? Do you trust me? And I work in an urban school district, and I see a lot of parents who don't care for their kids. I see a lot of injustice. I see a lot of abuse. And now that I'm a counselor, I really see a lot of abuse. And so I just kept having to walk that part out. Lord, and he would not give me the answer. Yes, you'll have a biological child. No, you won't. He just kept saying, do you trust me? All along the way, do you trust me? So in the year 2008, my husband's insurance miraculously changed. And he now had $12,500 of coverage on infertility. I was like, hallelujah, our prayers have been answered. This is exciting, and we were stoked. Because 2 years before that is when we had gone to see your RE, and he said in vitro. So we again prayed about it. We asked our friends to pray, help us discern what we're supposed to do with this. And everybody's answer that came back said, the Lord said, move forward. So we moved forward. I started taking all the injectables, all the hormones, all the everything, and it just makes you crazy. It just does. And I was pregnant. I was so excited. When we did the in vitro, I'll never forget, Dr. Stark said, you are textbook perfect. You're going to have twins, be ready. That's 5 kids. And I was like, that's going to be a lot. We left there that day. We waited several weeks, and we made this picture with this is the pregnancy test I took. And it says a picture's worth 1,000 words. And it's 1 Samuel 1:27. I prayed for this child, the Lord has granted you what I've asked him. This is how we told our family. We had everybody come over, and we presented this to them, and it was about 2 weeks later that I got the phone call that my hormones were not increasing high enough, and they were concerned, but told me not to be too alarmed. It does sometimes happen, and so we prayed and we prayed and we prayed and we prayed and we prayed. And the only thing I wanted to say is, do you trust me? And there were days that I would say, you know what, God, I know I'm supposed to trust you, but today I don't want to trust you because it doesn't look like you're going to give me what I want. But again, he would ask, do you trust me? I happen to have a very wise brother that I made a phone call to, And he happened to say to me, you know, Melissa, I asked him, I said, Scott, anybody, do you feel like the Lord has given you any information regarding my pregnancy? He said, you know, Melissa, when you were first pregnant, I just kept praying for a healthy pregnancy. And I felt like the Lord kept saying, you don't know what you're asking. And I knew at that moment that my baby was not going to make it. I knew. And I was crushed. And I called my doctor and I said, no, you're going to get me in tomorrow. And we're going to do a sonogram. And I went in the next day. My husband thought I was crazy because he was like, Melissa, you know, what? I said, Joe, I know. And I was right. They did a DNC the very next day. And I'm in that hospital. They did a DNC, mind you, because they wanted to know if something was wrong with her because I had 2 frozen embryos still left, or if something was wrong that my body rejected. We're trying to be proactive for the next time. And so I'm in that hospital, and I'll tell you, when you talk about a low, that was the lowest point of my entire life in that hospital. Because when you go in, they say, what are you here for? Because you can't read my chart. I was kind of snotty and said that. And she goes, I know what your chart says, but I need to know why you're in here. And so I was like, really? This like adds insult to injury here. So I said, well, I was in here, and it's time for me to be wheeled down to the surgery room, and you leave your spouse. If you've ever been in that situation, and you get wheeled away, and I'm looking around, and I'm mad, and I'm so upset, and I'm saying, Lord, this doesn't make sense. And he's like, Melissa, do you trust me? Do you trust me? Am I enough? Do you trust me? And so we continue on to the surgery room, and I'm looking for anybody I know. Any of Dr. Stark's nurses, Dr. Stark himself. I'm looking for somebody that I know. Tears are just streaming down my face. There's nobody. I'm like, God, where are you right now? Like, where are you? This does not feel okay. Like, you brought me this far. This kind of feels like a sick joke. Anybody ever felt like something feels like a sick joke? So I go out, and they perform the DNC, and I come to, and I'm still crying. It's like they literally just pushed pause on me. I didn't even realize it. But I'm still crying, and when I come to, the lady's like, are you okay? I'm like, no. And she goes over to the other nurse. I asked her if she's in pain. She says, no, and the lady's like, she just had a spontaneous abortion. And I was like, how insensitive is that? You know, like I was immediately like, and so at that moment, I'm just crying out to God, like, what in the world? And he's like, Melissa, do you trust me? Do you trust me? A month later in the mail, I get this dreaded letter. Baby girl Bardwell died, basically, because my body rejected her. There was nothing wrong with her. And I really went over the word, and I had to say, how can my body reject something that my heart and my mind have thought about for so many years? Like, I don't get it. And again, I was like, Melissa, do you trust me? Do you trust me? 6 months later, we went through round 2. I didn't even get pregnant. They said when they planted them, you know they have embryo glue, by the way? I think that's the most bizarre thing. But they have embryo glue. When they put that baby inside of you, they glue it in you. So weird. Anyway, after that, they changed some stuff up in my, they have me add a shot to my routine. Thought that was going to be the miracle fix. Dr. Starks again said, Melissa, textbook perfect. Expect twins. Didn't get pregnant. And the Lord again, Melissa, do you trust me? And last year when we talked about this, the thing that I said was, the verse, Proverbs 3:5-6, it's often a trite verse, and we throw it out there really quick. But really, if you take that verse apart, it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Every part of your heart. You cannot leave a part of it off on its own. Lean not on your own understanding, because I'll tell you what, this makes no sense to me. This makes no sense. Why it is that as the lady in the last session that I was talking to, I don't know if you were in there, but she was talking about she could go to Walmart. Because it seems like at every Walmart there's all these parents that don't know how to be parents to their kids. Why it is you see that? Why is it that I work in a school district where I have to hotline parents at least weekly because they're beating their kids? Why is it that all three of my adopted children, their parents couldn't take care of them because they were all addicted to drugs? Why do they get to have kids but I don't? That was the question that kept taunting me. In all your ways, lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, everything, your grief, your celebrations, your struggles, in every part of you, in all your ways, you acknowledge Him. It goes back to God. It goes back to what did I say at the beginning? What do you believe to be true about God? He who has everything, this is a quote from St. Augustine, he who has God has everything. He who has everything but God has nothing. It's an up and down roller coaster walking by faith through this fertility stuff. You'll hear that from anybody who's been through it. At one time or another, you're going to hit that completely unexpected high, but you're also going to hit those crashes. And where is your faith coming from? What do you believe to be true about God? You have to know that. It's an intense battle. Anna mentioned the spiritual warfare. It's intense because the enemy is right there saying, God doesn't love you. If He did, He would let you have this child. God doesn't see you. He doesn't care about you. It's the enemy that is just saying all of those things to you in this moment. If you were good enough, if your relationship with the Lord was deep enough, you would end up with this story. And that's not true. You have to battle them. And then there goes the other part. Like, I like to tell the Lord this, and I may be the only one who does this, but I like to say, Lord, I have some really good ideas. People come to me and they seek my counsel. Like, do you need my help? Do you need me to give you advice? Like, I do not feel like that. Like, I'm not a crazy person. I have some really good plans. So, in that situation, you've got to realize our plans, we don't know God's plans. His plans are perfect. Ours are skewed by our own beliefs, are skewed by our own wants, are skewed by our own thoughts. So, God wants you to know He is enough. He is sovereign, as Anna mentioned. He is in control of everything, even when it doesn't feel like it. He knows everything. He sees all the times you have to be picked up off the bed, or you have to force yourself to go. He knows that pain. He sees it all. He's with you through it all. I can remember during one of my roughest times, I was sitting at church one day and I was like, look, I just don't even feel like you see me. I don't feel like you notice. I don't feel like you really care that I'm really struggling here today. And after church that day, someone I don't normally talk to looks up to me and says, Melissa, I really feel like I'm supposed to tell you that God sees you today. And I immediately welled up with tears, and I was like, wow. Like, that just sucked the air out of my lungs. That was so cool, Lord. So I say to you today, you may be feeling like God doesn't see you. You're hurt. He doesn't see where you're at, but He is enough. He does see it. He knows. And if you will look, He will send you reminders of how much He cares. He desires a personal relationship with you. That's the biggest thing. And Allison touched on this as well. It's not about what you want. It's about what God's doing in your life. And I can stand here and say, because I think I'm one of the very few women in this building who are talking that didn't end up with a biological child success story. But my success story still stands. I'm still a mom of 3 great kids, whom if I had to go back and say, I'm going to give one of them up just to have a biological child, I'd never do it in a million years. I don't think, I'm going to put a little plug here, but I don't think adoption should just be a second plan. There are millions of kids out there who need a home. Millions. So that's my little plug. And if you are believers in God, the Bible talks endlessly about taking care of those orphans. I got my plug. His plan is perfect. I love Deuteronomy 32:4. It says, He is the rock. His works are perfect. plan, not a consolation prize. His works are perfect. All his ways are just. A faithful God who does no wrong, upright and just is he. God longs for you to pray, to wait on him, to listen to him, to enter into a personal relationship like you have with your spouse. A relationship where you go and talk to him daily about your struggle. That you will listen for him to guide you on what steps to take. That's what he wants with you. He wants you to know that he is so much bigger than all these desperate situations in your life. He wants you to know that he's always with you and always for you. His blessing isn't found in what he always gives or takes away. His blessing is found in the relationship you have with him. It's key. And if you're kind of teetering, like, I really don't know about God and all of this stuff, my encouragement to you would be, put your infertility on hold until you get that figured out. Because it is hard enough to do on its own, and it's even harder to do without God. God is more than enough. Here's the biggest thing. If you take anything away from today, this is what I want you to take away. God's plan for your life, God's story for my life, it wasn't a second-rate consolation prize or a backup plan. It was the prize. It was my story. It's not like God was sitting over there wringing his hands, this has got infertility, so I'm going to do a backup plan. No, this was his plan for me. I have talked to more women. I have understood and cried and walked this story with more women than I ever would have been able to do had I had things turn out the way I wanted them to, or the way I thought was best. God is enough. Psalms 18:30 says, "As for God, his way is perfect. The Lord's word is flawless. He shields all who take refuge in him." So, mention you to God. Here's some practical advice. Mention you to God and whatever he has in store for you. Praying to serve God's plan for your growing family. I would encourage you to stand before the Lord with 1 Samuel 3:10 in mind. Speak, Lord, your servant is listening. And I would encourage you to find other people who are godly people who can walk this journey and help you discern with you. Have some tough conversations. My encouragement would be have them today or sometime in the near week-long future about what you are willing to do and what you are not willing to do. Like I mentioned earlier, we were not willing to go into debt. Have those conversations. When will you stop? That's the other big key. Find a friend or another couple who will hold you accountable, because when you're in this desperate situation, your judgment goes out the window. Your hearing God sometimes goes out the window because you want what you want. So have people who can hold you accountable. Trust his plan. Proverbs 19:21 says, "Many are the plans in a man's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails." Put scriptures in your house. If you come into my office, I have scriptures all over my wall. And it's not just for infertility, it's for whatever season I have going through. Anna talked about building an altar. It's very similar to that in the sense that you are building a wall full of encouragement, like truth encouragement. Like I'm struggling with this wall, and I see truth. Listen to worship music. Chances are, and I'm sure you've all been there, your friends aren't going to know how to help you. Teach them. Be patient with them. Teach them. Take some time to date each other without talking about infertility. This is a stress on a marriage. Even the best marriages struggle through this time. So take some time to date each other without talking about it. And be a student of your spouse. What does your spouse need? My husband and I, we're opposite of most of the women in this room probably need to talk about it. Most of the men are probably just quiet, we just reflect. That's opposite in my house. My husband was like, let's talk about this. Let's make a plan. We need to know what we're going to do. And I'm like, I just don't know what to talk about. And so we had to learn how to help each other through that. Because otherwise it just drives wedges between each other. There's my family today. These are my perfect gifts. This is Samara, who is now almost 10, Jordan, who is 19, and Jace, who is 8. They are my absolute pride and joy, and they are so much fun. another picture of my family, and we're just at a pumpkin patch. So, I do want to say, though, again, this story is not about the plan. It's the plan for me. I met with Anna a year ago, and she was telling me the story, sitting in Panera, and she said, she's telling me the story, and the whole time she's talking, I was listening, but I was also saying, Lord, what do you need to say? It's any different than what she's saying. And then at one point in time in our story, when she's telling me about Mara being born, I was like, oh, so you have biological children. And she was like, yes. And I said, it was at that moment that the Lord said, I want you to talk about what I did when I said no. Now, I know that each and every one of you in here are hoping that is not your story. But I'm here to tell you on this side of it, it's going to be okay. You will be happy. You will find joy. You can grow your family in the way that God has designed for you. Because He is enough. And it is okay. And I'm leaving here to go to my sister-in-law's baby shower. It's okay. I have not been on the pill. I've saved money for 13 years. In essence, I've had 156 negative pregnancy tests. Because that's how many months it's been since I've been on the pill. With the exception of the one time it was positive. It didn't work out. It's okay. God is enough. Trust and work all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him. He will make your path straight. He will lead you like He led the Israelites. He will lead you on your story, not your backup plan.